Welcome back to Barrier Breakers. We are here today with Amy Woods, a local barrier breaker from Rockford, Tennessee. How are
Hi.
you today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Hi.
Thank
episode
you for coming in.
11.
Yes, episode 11.
11.
And Amy, we will start you off with we believe we told you before. We come into this not prepared with questions. We really just want to get to know who you are, hear your story, and I'm sure it'll resonate with some of our listeners out there.
Yes, yes.
So, start us off with your childhood. Tell us how you grew up and yeah, take us all the way back.
Ooh, we're going way back. Well, I'm originally from Chicago. Grew up on the southeast side, and I'm from what they call a mill brat. All my family worked in the mills and in the engineering with train industry and the gas industry and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was for the most part, a humble experience. It was a little rough where I grew up at, a lot of gang activity and stuff. But yeah, just other than like, where do you want me to go with this? Into the
No, you just
stories
yeah,
or?
you just
I mean,
yeah.
it's unscripted.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Unscripted.
it was. I don't remember too much of my childhood. I'm not
Mhm.
sure why, but about when I was 11, my parents got divorced,
Mhm.
and then my dad was shortly thereafter diagnosed with brain cancer that spread to his heart.
Metastasize. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Oh
and he
wow.
couldn't get that removed, so he passed away when I was about 14 years old.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and from there, it just kind of, my childhood from there, I was actually the adult of the family, so
Mhm.
I've lived on my own since I was 15. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's been kind of an adventure, I guess. I like to call it my journey.
Mhm.
And because everything happens for a reason, I actually lived with my dad before he got sick because my mom's not, she tries the best she can.
Yeah. Mhm.
She
Sure.
tries the best she can. And it's just how she was raised. So I like the show Barrier Breakers because that's what I'm doing. I'm breaking barriers for my, I guess you could call circumstances that I was born into
Mhm.
Sure.
and tradition of my family
Yeah,
and
your
stuff like
family
that.
curses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates really strongly with me and a few of our other past guests, Norita, for
Yeah.
example, especially.
Yeah.
So, were you the only child growing up?
No, I have an older brother, but for whatever reason, I was the black sheep. So,
Mhm.
yeah. He just kind of, I guess he kind of just went inward and just kind of separated himself for the most part. So, my mom really kind of coddled him a lot.
Mhm.
Where me, I was more of the argumentative child, like, no, this is how things should be being
Yeah.
done. She was always afraid of money. I've used to pay her bills when I was like 13, 14 years old. And then she, shortly after my father passed, and I'm not bad mouthing her. It's just you do what you know how to do until you know better.
Sure.
Yeah.
And at the time, she didn't know better. And she was dating a married man that moved in probably about a week after my father passed away. And he didn't like me because I was very vocal.
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
Opinionated.
I'm very opinionated, I always have been.
Yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, I voiced my opinion on it, and she chose him instead of me, and I got kicked out. So, been on my own. It's been rough. I've, I can't say that I've done it smoothly. I mean, 15 years old, what do? You
Yeah.
can't get a
Yeah. I
place,
mean,
you
you're
can't get
Yeah.
a
not.
job, you
And hey,
can't,
no judgments here, truly,
you
whatever you feel
know.
comfortable sharing.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, so I latched on to older men and they
mhm.
were abusive and the last physically abusive relationship really did me in. I was probably about 18 years old and I remember he threw a Christmas tree at me and he stabbed me and I took a steel baseball bat to him and left and never went back.
Oh, wow. Where
So
were you at that time?
I was up north still.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been here for about 14 years. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And then after that, I met my ex husband, the father of my children. And I thought he was wonderful. It was no physical abuse, no, none of the chaos like it
Yeah.
was. Um, but it was a slow grooming of control.
Mhm.
And it
Was
was
he a lot older than you as well?
no, we were the exact same age, actually.
Okay.
Our birthdays were 4 days apart. Yeah. And, it was a slow grooming. His mom was very manipulating. She liked to pick up people who were going through a hard time and say, "This is how we do things. You need to do this. You need to dress like this." And I actually started doing real estate back in 2005, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were just going to school and stuff like that. And I had made close to $1 million within 2 years, but I hid it from him because I knew what would happen.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when he found it, he took it and he blew it all. So from there, he also traveled and he had been unfaithful. So it was a loveless marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have $1,000 in his pocket, and I would be given $100 to grocery shop, gas, kids, all of it. And it was control. He knew I couldn't leave. So
Yeah.
this is where the story gets real good.
I'm like, it's already been.
Man.
Yeah, this is where it gets real good. But I decided I was done. He had flipped his truck because he was mad that I told him I wanted a divorce. He broke his back, so I stayed to take care of him because I wouldn't leave my kids down like that. And I left with 2 kids. One was driving, one's a type 1 diabetic, and $900 in my pocket. And I tried as best as I could for as long as I could. I had no furniture, no nothing. I had to rent my refrigerator. I made $20 too much to get help
Yeah, that's
Oh.
because my ex had they consider you're
Yeah.
still,
Mm-hmm.
in
Sure.
that income bracket together, and they're like, "Well, why doesn't he help you?" I'm like,
You tell me why he's not helping.
Could
Yeah.
you go find out?
Yeah.
Please. But
These are the questions that plague us every morning.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I've tried. He was, but it was $10 at a time because he knew it wouldn't go nowhere.
Were those his only kids? Your 2 sons were his only?
Yeah. We essentially grew up together. I've known him since I was about 16.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought he was safe. I thought he would be good. And despite everybody telling me you don't want to marry into that family, I'm like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's so
Yeah.
much better than what I'm used to,
Mhm.
So, but when I moved out, he kind of made sure I couldn't make it. And I ended up having to send my kids back to live with him. And I knew what would happen. His family likes to alienate themselves from, other family members.
Mhm.
Like his dad doesn't talk to his family. She doesn't talk to her family. I wasn't allowed to talk to mine. So I knew what was going to happen. And about 3 months later, I ended up going homeless. I just couldn't make it. I was working. This was up in New Tazewell, and the wages there are like $10 an hour
Yeah.
at best, and they think that's great money. And probably it is if you're not, just by yourself and trying to start
Yeah.
over.
Mhm.
But I ended up homeless. I came to Knoxville because there was nowhere up there to get work, first of
Mhm.
all.
Yeah, and it's still kind of like that in the Townsville
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And you're really ousted in that kind of a situation. It's like, okay, what's happening to you? I went back up there to visit my kids, and I ran into a lady who was my kids were very active in sports, and her daughter was active in sports, and she goes, "You look like you're on crack." I'm like, "No, I'm stressed.
Yeah.
I'm working nonstop. I'm feeding myself dollar menu food items,
Yeah.
And so they just assumed that that's all it was. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, that's not what this is,
Yeah.
But being the person that, going through what I went through when I grew up, I didn't want to badmouth their father.
Mhm.
I didn't want to bring them into court and have them choose. And it was under the impression that it was going to be an agreement to have joint custody, but he found out he would still have to pay me child support. And because of that, he sued me full custody while I was homeless. Can't afford a
Of
lawyer.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
And in order to fight that, they either bring the kids into the court or you
Mhm.
have to have a lawyer. And I didn't know the laws back then. I didn't know about alimony. I didn't know about any of that. Nobody advised me on that. And I ended up paying him child support. while I'm
What?
homeless.
My
Yeah.
gosh.
So it's a he didn't even have to follow the parent agreement because they were teenagers. It was up to them.
Mm-hmm.
In this state, if they're 11, 12 years old,
Yeah.
they
Mhm.
have a say in it. If they don't
Yeah.
want to see you, they don't have to.
Yeah. I was 11 and I testified when it was time for my mother and my father to terminate their parental rights. So
Yeah.
I remember that day all too well.
Yeah, and I didn't want to do that to my kids, and I just told the judges, like, no, you're not bringing my kids into court.
Mhm.
They're not going to choose between their parents. They shouldn't have to in an adult situation.
That's extremely selfless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No, I'm serious. Like that's extremely selfless. Like there's so many people who don't like they get so caught up in the anger and the animosity and they don't consider the kids
Yeah.
and they don't consider the opinions. So
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Well, thank you. One day they'll see that.
Yeah.
One day
Yeah.
they'll see that. It's just, he's getting emotional. I love it.
I-
Thank
This
you.
is
If you-
Gentry.
if you haven't watched the show, oh,
But it still didn't work. They alienated them from me. Said made them say I couldn't buy name brand clothes, so she's a bad mom. And my kids signed for football for college, and they never told me. I found out through a Facebook post seeing their grandmother next to him. They graduated. Bless his heart. They graduated. I didn't know when the dates were. All that stuff. Football games, I was told by somebody else that knew the situation, but he passed away.
Yeah.
So after that, I was left out of the loop completely. And I could have took my ex-husband back for contempt of court, but again, I'm still trying to rebuild my life.
Mhm.
And I was in homelessness, and this is kind of where my transformation started, but I still went even further down. So just hold on. I noticed homelessness becomes normal
Mhm.
to people. It's a normal everyday routine to them. And if you normalize something, you don't have no desire to get out of it. It's just this is the way it is. I'm gonna wait. One day a house will be available for me. They're gonna help me. And I'm like, I can't have this normalized.
Mhm.
And then you go to deal with it, you get into the drugs. And a lot of people who start off homeless don't start off because of drugs. They start off because of certain situations that a company closed or
Yeah.
circumstances lead to.
yeah,
Mhm.
circumstances lead to it. I knew a guy who was making, $500,000 and he was on the streets, because the company closed and he lost everything. His wife left him and
Mhm.
everything was gone. So, but then he ended up on drugs to deal with it because it's such a different mindset.
Yeah.
It's survival. It's not, everyday thriving and waking up and having coffee. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I got to get to the gas station and get washed up before everybody else does. And it's nasty. And then I got to get to the grocery store. Oh, I need to find $1. I need to, whatever.
And when you were in Knoxville doing most of your homelessness, okay.
Yes. I stayed out actually at the Economy Lodge, I think. And when I couldn't afford the room, he allowed us to keep our car there
Mhm.
because he knew I wasn't, there to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I was actually delivered the full custody papers in my car. Yeah. So that was an adventure.
Mhm.
But I worked really hard. I worked 3 jobs and I got out of it in 2 months. So yeah. And an angel, I believe people are put in the right place at the right time when you're supposed to find them.
Sure. We believe that too.
Yeah. And I had been looking for a room, and this lady, she saw me, or she let me meet her, showed her house. She had a daughter, but she was renting out a room for some extra money. And I was like, well, it's going to have wait for a couple weeks until I get paid again for me to afford it. She goes, no. She goes, you're not going back to that hotel except for to get your stuff and come back in.
Oh.
So I was just like, thank you, God. She's
Bless
like,
her.
yeah. She really helped me out, and she made a home cooked meal for me when I got back. And yeah, she was an angel.
Is she still alive?
Oh yeah. We still talk, definitely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and from there, my kids were still kind of talking to me and whatnot. And if I'm honest, I went hog wild, because I'm like, finally I get to relax. I'm free, but I still didn't have my kids. So
Yeah.
the only way I knew how to deal with that was to start drinking really heavy.
Mhm.
And it's weird, like I said again, people are placed in your path for whatever reason.
Sure.
My now husband and me met at a local bar.
What's the name of the bar?
Oh, I don't want to say.
Say it. Say it. I met my husband at a bar. We met at Southbound, so it's fine.
Twisted Mike's.
I don't know. Is Twisted Mike still around?
It is. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Fell in love at Twisted Mike's.
Yes,
Okay.
fell in love with Twisted Mike's. But I wasn't part of the party crowd. It was more like I like talking to the older fellers at 5 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when it started getting wild, I would leave.
Mhm.
But he was going through his own thing. He had lost his past wife suddenly after 38 years of marriage,
Wow.
and we kind of met each other in this depleted place, But we both were probably the ones who drug ourselves down far enough to know that change was needed. And I don't know if I would have gone that far down because he was going down. So we were kind of pushing each other there, I guess.
Mhm.
And my kids quit talking to me completely after that. And I drank and drank and drank. And I had no control over my life. I had no control, for the past 20 years. And the outcome of me trying to gain control, I still had no control.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I know this is crazy. In my mind, the only control I had was nobody could tell me not to drink and nobody could tell me not to take my life.
Yeah.
So my now husband had left to go to the store and he come back and I had drank a whole fifth of whiskey and I had a gun loaded in my mouth. And he tackled me to get the gun out. And I don't remember this. I was completely
Yeah.
catatonic. And I woke up 4 days later in the hospital. Yeah. So thank you, Jesus.
Yes,
I
yes.
did not do it.
How long ago was this?
This was, when did we meet? 7 years ago. Yeah. 7 years ago. And then after that, I was in the hospital and the nurse come in and I hope I'm not rambling.
No, you're fine.
You're
Okay.
fine.
A nurse come in, again, another angel.
Mhm.
She come in and she's like, what happened? How did you get here? And I was telling her a little bit about it. She goes, okay, so what are you going to do now?
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? I have no job. I have no car. I have no kids. I have no house. I don't have anything. What can I do?
Mhm.
She goes, exactly. She goes, you have nothing holding you back. She goes, you have no obligations. You have no responsibility. She goes, what do you want to do with your life? What circumstance do
Oh.
you want to make it?
I need tissue.
And I never thought about it like that, And she's like, you just have to choose what you want.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I guess I don't know. I've never been even asked, what do I want? I don't know how to answer that.
You have no baseline.
No, nobody's ever asked me what I wanted. I've always, okay, you want this, here you go, and
Yeah.
I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. And I was just like,
No one's ever
I don't
taken
even know
care of
who I
Amy.
am,
Yeah.
So I was sitting in the bed and I was like, I want to go to school, and I was just like, I need a college education. I have to go. So I enrolled in college right there while I was in the hospital. Had no clue how I was going to pay for it, but I did it. My husband, I gave him kind of an ultimatum. I said, you've got to sober up or I can't keep going down this road.
Mhm.
And he agreed. And he had a little complications with it. He went into liver failure, but we've reversed it.
Good.
And he just because he tried to do it by himself instead of going to a
Mhm.
hospital.
Yeah. Once
It's
you're
the
that
most
far,
dangerous.
yeah.
It's the
Once you're that
most
far
dangerous.
into any addiction, you have to get medical help to get off of it.
And it's the one that can absolutely kill you the fastest
Wow.
because your liver, you throw everything out of rhythm.
Mhm.
And, once he got sober, we moved in with his dad who had Alzheimer's to take care of him. And we stayed sober. And I started my business in the middle of that and just been moving forward ever since. And while that situation with my kids hasn't panned out, they're adults and I have to let them make their own choices. And I just surrender to when they're ready, they'll come.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Yeah. I hope they'll come, and I will. Just speaking to someone whose mom was, my mom was addicted to crack cocaine, and my father was never in my life until I sought him out when I was 18. Um, I became an adult, I understood the why behind it.
Yeah.
The why behind my mom going to seek out these drugs because she went through a very tumultuous time in her life. How it was also very selfless of her to allow us to move on and be with my aunt, and not try to contest having her parental rights terminated. So
Yeah.
I applaud you. I was that child like your like your boys, and I just hope and pray that one day they come to see that, their mom is just, you were a victim of circumstances, and now that you are whole and you're healthy and you're healed, I hope they do come back into your life.
I do too. Yeah. They
Yeah.
will. They'll get curious.
Yeah.
One day I hope they notice, like I hope they realize that like you did this all to protect them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like it was for their benefit.
Yeah, and that's what
But
being a
even
mom is.
Yes.
You don't drag them down with you. You make sure
Mhm.
they're safe and fed. And gosh, I can only imagine what would have happened with them if I would have took them into homelessness.
Yes.
I wouldn't have wanted that for nothing.
Mhm.
So I don't regret that decision at all. And one day they'll see that. They have to experience life,
Sure.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time to heal that. I actually had to grieve 2 kids who were alive
Yeah.
in order to get to that point of saying, they've got to experience life to understand, oh, she wasn't joking when she said she didn't have the money. It's not that she didn't care.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
they haven't gotten to
it
that
wasn't an
space.
excuse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they haven't
Yeah.
gotten to that space yet.
Mhm.
But so,
Okay.
yeah, but now I love helping women see that they have a choice. So,
Mhm.
and when you choose yourself and you choose to help others and find what you're passionate about, it changes everything for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy is actually another local podcast host here. You want to tell everybody what the name of your podcast
Yes,
is?
yes. I have a podcast called Shut Up and Dance, and it's real business talk for women entrepreneurs. We get very down in the nitty gritty about, not saying, oh, you can make so much per month. Okay, no, this takes 5 years, and you're going to be eating sandwiches some nights, to get it to
Yeah.
go.
Mhm.
And it just shows people a little bit of vulnerability in the starting a business space
Mhm.
instead of the intimidation of I make $1 million kind of thing. Yeah.
I think what's the going saying here is vulnerability is like it's a superpower.
Is a
It
yes.
is.
Mhm.
It really
that's
is.
kind of like what what we're based this show's based on. Is like
Yeah.
vulnerability is a superpower.
It takes courage to be vulnerable.
does,
It does,
yeah.
and then to share it with people like people that we've interviewed. Last was it? I think it was Narita.
Mhm.
And she was just like, how are you just able to be so vulnerable, like and share? And it's like there comes a point in your life where you kind of just it is what it is. Like
Yep.
Yep.
your story's your story,
Mhm.
and like it's kind of like your testimony is your testimony. Like no one can take that away from you. Like
No.
no one can tell you that you didn't feel a certain way or that something didn't happen to you. Like it's it's not even personal bias. Like it's just it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's beauty in that and something in sharing that thing, and not from like an arrogant standpoint, but like from a just from like a vulnerability, like sharing, like because people would never, like we say this all the time, but people would never know.
Mhm.
They would never know your story.
Right.
Like, and they couldn't. They look at the outside and
Yep.
they have a predisposition.
Mhm.
And like I don't care who you are. Like you
Mhm.
look at the outside, you look at the photos, you look at
Yeah.
You
at
automatically
like
judge it.
everything, and
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
have a
Yeah.
predisposition that this person has it all together and has never looked in the mirror and cried. Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And then you get to a point where you are intentional in asking questions with the purpose behind the question to learn about what makes them them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love his passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, nobody should be ashamed of their journey.
Mm-mm.
Your journey happens for a reason. And I would never have found myself in this space if I wouldn't have went through all of that, and my life would have not, I would have been doing that same path that I grew up in.
Correct. But I'm saying the people that listened to you along the way,
Yeah.
the people that walked in and were like, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's like that self responsibility, like owning it. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't want to own it. They want to
Mm-mm.
push it off on somebody else.
It's their
They
fault.
want to
It's
blame,
Yes.
they want to blame
I could have so
situations.
easily blamed my
They
ex-husband.
want to
Yeah, or
blame
blamed your mom,
Yeah.
and yeah.
And I can't say that I didn't.
They
It
want to
took
use
me.
situational as circumstances as an excuse, but it's like in spite of that,
Mm-hmm.
like you're here anyways.
Yeah.
I applaud you
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
and your
Thank
selflessness.
you.
Like, I can't imagine. I have two boys. I'm about to be 7 and 5,
Yeah.
and
It's
I can't put myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put myself there, and the fact that you had to, like,
it
sacrifice,
changes you.
well, that
It
the
really
fact that you
does.
had to sacrifice knowing them for their own
Mhm.
well-being is just
Mm-hmm.
too much for me right now.
You're good?
Oh.
Okay.
I love it.
And I love that you
Gosh.
not only brought yourself up, you brought your husband up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys did this together.
We did.
So what does your husband do now?
He's actually, well, he's 20 years my senior. I like
Okay.
older men. Sorry.
Yeah. That's all right.
But, I didn't have to deal with all the dramatic stuff that newly divorced 40-year-olds go through,
Mhm. Yeah.
I was done with drama in my life at that point.
Mhm.
And there was something different about him. And he was honest. Even though he was going through his own stuff, he was still very honest about what he was going through.
Yeah.
And, it started off as a really close friendship because he would tell me, about how he felt like he was cheating on her with me. And, we were very open about everything.
Mhm.
And, he actually went through two major life changes. After she passed, he retired because they
Mhm.
actually worked at the same company.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to go back to that. And so it was really hard for him, and with his dad getting Alzheimer's, so he could take care of his dad and stuff. And when we moved in with him, he just was really busy with his dad and spending as much time with his dad as he could. And now he's just perfectly happy sitting there mowing his lawn and doing his own thing. He really doesn't do too much, but and it used to bother me because I'm like a go-getter. I'm like, you
Yeah.
have to get active. You have to.
Let's shut up and
When are you
dance.
gonna
Yeah.
do something? And I was like, can't you go find a hobby to get out of the house or something? He's like, babe, I am perfectly fine. He goes, I've traveled my whole life for work. I've been busy for my whole life. He
Yeah.
goes, I'm enjoying this. I'm like, okay, I ain't sitting here though. So it works.
Mhm. Yeah, you both have the freedom to do your own things
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So
That's good. And your company, so you coach women.
I do. Let me
All
get
right.
a drink of water.
Oh, you're fine. I just want to hear more about this and how that got started.
So I actually started because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I know that's a common story right now, but it's
That's
the
okay.
truth. I had been coming up to graduating from college, and I was just like, okay, I need to find an internship because I have a degree in communications with marketing and professional writing.
Mhm.
I'm like, I got to get into a marketing company and get an internship going. Well, then everything shut down, and internships are the first thing. That's the first budget that goes. And they said, we don't know when they'll be back open. So I'm like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went to college, and, I did really well. And I can't just, not use it. So I started by opening up my own marketing company
Mhm.
at first. And I'm like, I don't know I've never ran a business. I
Mhm.
had no clue. Well, then I met a coach, and I'm like, what's a coach? Like, tell me about this, And she's telling me, a little bit about what she does. I'm like, well, did you go to school for it? And she goes, no. She goes, I just have life experience. I'm like, girl,
Best
I've
teacher.
got enough experience
Yeah.
for everything. And so I hired her as my mentor, and I figured it out. And I started with sales because my experience with real estate, I was really good with sales. And then I just, I wasn't, I mean, I was excited about it, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't like, yeah, let's wake up every day and do that.
Yeah.
And I still do it. It's not that I love teaching and watching people grow their business and earn money they've never even dreamed about before. So that's really exciting. But then I just, I have a mentor that I've had now for about 3 years. I just love her to death. We're really close friends. And I was just like, I want to do something different. I went to the permission slip conference here, and Jade, I'm going to screw up her last name, I think it's Williams. She got up there and she's like, your purpose isn't what you do, it's how you make people feel because of what you do.
That's good.
And I'm like, that's it. And I
Mhm.
knew I had to start helping women see what choices they do have, especially with, I'm not going to get political, but the
Yeah.
political climate right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of choices being taken, and, we have just a different economic thing going on too on top of it. And I really just wanted women to know they have choices. It doesn't matter what's happening, it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside world.
Yeah.
You can create the circumstance that you want your life to live.
Mhm.
And my saying, and I put this quote on everything, is we don't change how life's being lived unless we change how we're living our own life. And I help women take responsibility for that with Women Choosing Excellence. Yeah.
I love that. That's a
It's
very
good.
powerful mission.
Thank
So
you.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah. How many women are you currently coaching?
Right now I have 10. They're in kind of a group type situation. But I'm opening it up more to a one-on-one, kind of create your own journey with it. Like we can
Mhm.
do one VIP, or you can schedule two, or if you want to be with me for a whole year, we'll work that out. But that way they're not tied to a contract kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love that. You've created something very beautiful out of all of your trauma.
Well, thank you.
I-
Yeah, and if people who are listening, they it's much more than just journaling. It's much more than just I guess the reason why I want to bring that up is because, people say, well, she married, somebody older, that she might I've heard that before,
Mhm.
you married somebody older, you've had a handout. No, I have not. I've had to heal. It wouldn't have mattered how much money was handed to me.
Mhm.
Sure.
I had to go through all the steps of understanding who I was,
Yep.
why this happened. I had to go back to my childhood, and we're all, each one of us, there's something that never goes away.
Mhm.
That's a part of your soul.
Yeah.
And you just have to rediscover that. Like, I'm generous. Everybody's love, kindness, truth, loyalty. Take away all the labels, take away everything that's ever been told, and find yourself in those cues. Um, because that's how you're going to discover who you are and where you want to be at. And that's how you start to heal trauma. You have to go back to who you are. Because trauma, I mean, I'm over getting divorced,
Yeah.
It was the fact that I lost who I was
Mhm.
and I had to find myself. That's the trauma. That significant happening changes something about you, and you lose who you're familiar with. So you have to grieve who you used to be, which there's nothing wrong with grief. It's love.
Mhm.
And then you have to rediscover who you are on the other side of it.
I was actually telling you met Jessica, my makeup
Yeah,
artist,
yeah.
yesterday. We were talking about when I was younger. I was like, I don't want to have a kid because of my upbringing. I didn't want to mess up another child's life, because not everyone's as resilient like you and I and Gentry and so many of the other people we've had on the show.
Yeah.
And yet, I said that the thing is, becoming a mother, you grieve the entire time. You grieve knowing they're going to grow up and leave you one day. You
Oh my
grieve
gosh,
when they go
yeah.
out the door and you're afraid for their safety. Like, it's the most
It's the most
big-
beautiful, traumatic
Yes.
experience.
Yeah.
Really traumatic. That's exactly right.
Gorgeous and tumultuous.
Wait till they drive. You're like,
Oh goodness! No. Your kids will get there first.
I can't. No.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for the day that you share with us that you and your sons are reunited.
Yeah.
Have you
Yes.
spoken to either of them?
I try to,
Okay.
but they block me. So
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, they know how to get a hold of me though,
Hmm.
because there's still friends that are mutual that they're in contact with that are still in I get updates. So
That's good.
yeah,
It's good.
yeah, they're doing good. So that's all I want. I want them to be happy.
I love that. And they both still live here locally, to the best
Yeah,
of your
they're in
knowledge.
Tazewell.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Very
yeah.
good. Well, Amy, thank you for your time today here
Yeah,
with
thank you
Thank
for
us.
coming.
you. You guys are wonderful. You
Thank
really
you.
are.
You are as well. We try to end the show off with giving a shout out or some kind of showing of love. Gentry, what do you think we should?
Uh, I don't know. I'm out.
You're like, I'm
I'm
already.
checked out. That was just that was difficult.
I guess, are you comfortable with sharing your boys' names?
Yeah.
Let's just show some love for. Wait, we all got sons.
We
Two are
will.
sons.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Ah,
do that. So, Malcolm, your mother loves you so much.
Yeah.
You are the light of my life. You can't hear this right now because you're not even two, but I love you.
you'll hear it one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. To my children, Callan's my oldest and Silas is my youngest, and they've taught me so much. I've learned so much about being a son by becoming a father.
Yeah.
And I'm-
Just don't even.
yeah. I can't do anything else. I'm spent today. Oh.
You're fine.
Oh.
Amy.
Blake and JJ, just know that I'm always your biggest fan. I'm always rooting for you, and nothing's ever lost. When you're ready to come home, come home.
Yeah, come home.
Come home.
Well, thank you, Amy.
You're
And thank you
welcome.
guys to listening. This has been another episode of Barrier Breakers. We can't wait to connect with you guys again.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.